we can start. Let me check. Okay, time is all right. 11. Great. Good morning, everyone. Friday. Nice weather, I think, at least on my side. It's very foggy, very autumn weather. Good weather for talking a little bit about the compliance, GDPR, data protection, privacy, a little bit. I probably need to jump into the slides instead of having only the marketing slides, but very important. As you can see, we with the Readynez preparing a lot of webinars this autumn, plenty of them on the different topics, some of them connected with the security, some of them connected with the privacy, some of them with the technologies. As you can see, you can very easily find them and register for more if you want to do, if you want to see. And those webinars as well are recorded, so they will be available later as well if you cannot see them or if you just missed someone from the past. So you'll be able to observe them again. And let me go, in that case, I just need to check one more time my proper screen. It's probably will be that one. Okay, and we can go. GDPR 2025. Overview of the compliance. No worries, we don't have a new GDPR. That things not exist, but we have some changes around the GDPR about the General Data Protection Regulation, which is a standard for almost every organizations and every governments around the world, because European Union created this first regulations in 2016. And then the many other countries just simply, maybe not copy paste, but adapted that kind of regulations to their own systems. And based on that one, we have a different one. The second one, most important probably, is the CCPA, California Consumer Protection Act. The next one, probably important, was LGPD, data protections for Brazil, and more and more and more and more. We want to look today for the 2 hours or less how we can prepare our organizations, especially looking for the small and medium enterprises, for the data protections regulations compliance in effective ways. So we're looking for a couple of things which are happening around the GDPR. Agenda for the webinar is the same like usual agendas with my webinars. Welcome now. First session about the 45 minutes, refreshment break, 10 minutes to grab some tea, water, iron, juice, or whatever you want. And yes, link to the chat. Yes, I will put the link to the chat. And as well, session 2 and the summary into the at the end of everything. Going for the requests, I can do that one very quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you got that one. Okay, good. The challenges for SME, small and medium enterprises, from the data protections and the privacy perspective. We go for them just in a moment a little bit, but as a very early beginning, we're looking for the simplified compliance obligations because our compliance is super complex, and especially for the small business is very complex because we have multiple different regulations, which works with us, but as well sometimes against us if we do not have enough time to implement everything, or if you do not know how to implement this properly. Rise of the privacy enhancing technologies, PETs. It's more and more coming to our system because we have a modern technology, because we have emerging technologies, and those things coming to us, and we need to protect our environments from that kind of technologies. If you see that very nice humanoid here in the early version, that could be our pet here in this example. Yes, a little bit dangerous for us in some scenarios. And as well, we're looking more and more and more for the ethical AI, ethical artificial intelligence, and automated decisions oversights, because we are ready entered to the time when we have automation which make decisions. We have artificial intelligence protocols which are making decisions for us. We have this from a long time, for the couple of years at least, but it's growing very, very, very fast now in the multiple different places. So we need to look for them for this as well. Why I am here, why Readynez invited me, as I'm working with the Readynez for the long time, working as a consultant and independent consultant and a freelance trainer for Readynez as well. Used to work in the banking systems for some years, used to work in the data center, in the physical data centers, working with the cloud compliance, security, and that kind of topics, and as well ethic for the last few years as a special add-in, let's say, but the technology is with me for over 2 decades. I'm finishing some legal trainings years ago with the European law and the corporate governance as well, so helping customers to understand why those things are important as well. And on the other side, we have a Readynez, which with the Readynez, we're delivering the tons of the courses, trainings, webinars, and programs for the customers around the world. I am delivering many of those for the Readynez as well, mostly from the Microsoft stack. And it's happening quite often. So you always can find us somewhere and finding some interesting to learn over this topic. Preparing the future data protection regulations effectively. I think that the regulations are already in the European Union, and we're focusing mostly on the European Union. Even you are maybe joining us from the different countries than the member of the states, is rapidly growing. It's rapidly growing and is in constant change, maybe not directly, but indirectly by the other regulations. The name of the GDPR 2025 could be a little bit confusing, so don't take it very, very seriously. We don't have anything like a GDPR Act or GDPR Regulations 2025. We still have a normal standard regulations from the April 2016, and nothing changed. It's just the standard regulations. However, the other regulations and other acts and extra guidelines, for example, from the European Data Protection Board, guidelines from the other organizations, regulations for the different markets as well, affecting directly or indirectly the GDPR itself. We're still following the same standard regulations, the same standard rules, but those rules are going to change. And we want to look today how we can prepare our organizations for the things which we already probably have, but the things which coming to us as well. The trends for the data protections for the small and medium enterprises. I just put the 3 of them. We have more, of course, but I put 3 which, from my perspective, are very, very important. The first one, very good for us, simplified compliance obligations, because we have multiple different rules. If you're looking for the list of the regulations for the data protections and the cybersecurity and the artificial intelligence, which we're connecting them together because we're talking about the privacy, we can find almost 100 regulations in the European Union, just in the European Union. We're not touching still the local regulations, which some countries have special regulations. And we're not touching any special guidelines from the competent authorities, which the guidelines are almost like a rule. It's almost like a rule. So European Commission's proposing risk-based exemptions from the small and medium enterprises, and newly recognized small mid-cap enterprise, like a small versions of the GDPR. So the GDPR Lite, sometimes when you're looking for the reading the blogs, you can sometimes find this as called GDPR Lite. So that one will allow us to manage this a little bit lighter, potentially, and having the less obligations to implement all of those things which you have normally for the big enterprises, because we are small, because we don't have a tools, skills, workforce, time, and budget for implementing everything like the bigger enterprises. So example of this, ROPA, records of processing activities, which is a must in the GDPR, would only be required if the data processing poses high risk to individuals, easing to the burden of the smaller firms. And that high risk could be very high risk of the processing data, but as well could be high risk artificial intelligence usage, for example. So then we will need to have a ROPA implemented properly. Rise of the privacy enhancing technologies. We as a small organizations increasingly adopting technologies like a differential privacy or zero knowledge proofs, to minimize the exposure of the data. We're encrypting data differently. We're putting data in the different places. We're protecting the data in the different ways than we used to have in the past, because we have that technology is already available. So we can, for example, take the very important sensitive set of data and distribute the set of data across the 5 different servers. And then if any of those servers for potential will be breached, then that data will be useless, because for receiving all of those data, we need to have data from all of those 5 servers, and only one server has been breached. So you can use that kind of activities here as well. That tool is helping to meet the GDPR requirements more efficiently and securely as well. And the ethical artificial intelligence automated decision oversights, because AI is becoming the central of the business operations. Whatever you like it or not, whatever you are interested with the AI or not, the AI is the thing which came to us and working with us heavily. We're using ChatGPT, we're using Copilots, we're using Mistral, we're using multiple different processes. But it's not only that, that typical artificial intelligence and machine learning, but our daily usage of the data is connected and very much dependent on the artificial intelligence. So GDPR updates will place the greater scrutiny to automated decision making. We need to implement more responsible AI functionalities. It's not coming directly from the GDPR, but it's coming from the AI Act, for example, where we need to ensure transparency and fairness in our artificial intelligence system, especially when the personal data are involved or when we're making decisions using AI, which affecting the humans, affecting the person. So that kind of things we need to have in mind once we're working with the data. We have as well trends in the regulations. You can see some of those set lists, not full lists, not finished lists, some of those regulations which we need to be familiar with. GDPR, of course, core EU data protection since 2018. 2018, of course, remember, is the enforcement date, not the date of the publications. Publications is the April 2016. So it's already a long time with us. E-privacy directive from the European Union, which is not super new, as you can see, but it's still sometimes we don't remember that it even exists. Very often complementing our GDPR in areas like management of the cookies and management of the direct marketing, telling us what we can do, what we cannot, or what we shouldn't do with the marketing data. AI Act regulations, of course, regulating the artificial intelligence systems based on the risk level, as well enforcing us to be compliant with the transparency, data governance, human oversight rules, and so on, and plenty of those implementations from the GDPR, as well as implementation from the for the AI Act affecting the GDPR indirectly. European Data Act, brand new, fresh, hot off the press, exciting new regulations. Data Act, which granting user rights to access and share data from the connected devices, especially impacting IoT, OT, cloud services, and everything around the data portability. We need to as well have regulations which protecting the data directly, which are using by the users. And we have as well something which maybe is not very important for the majority of the organizations, but the political advertising regulations as well, implementing some of those scenarios, how we can manage our political advertising and implications of the data in use as well. We, of course, cannot forget about the cybersecurity. So we have a NIS directive, NIS 2 directive, which, of course, replacing the NIS 1. That is the cybersecurity readiness directive for the critical infrastructure. You probably are quite familiar because we're talking about this for the long time inside the European Union. Extending cybersecurity obligations, especially for the important entities like healthcare, utilities, and so on, including managed service providers. So if you are a managed service provider, in some scenarios, you maybe need to be compliant with NIS 2 as well. Required incident reporting, risk management, and supply chain security, especially looking for the third-party and fourth-party provider. DORA, Digital Operation Resilience Act, which is the directive number 2022/2554. They're coming together very much. This is for the critical infrastructure environment, but only in the financial sector. So cybersecurity hygiene, cybersecurity practices for the financial institutions and the ICT provider for financial institutions, which is the big bunch of them. And as well, we have a Cyber Resilience Act for everyone else, for every other organizations, setting cybersecurity standards for the digital products like software and smart devices, including secure by design settings, including vulnerability handling requirements, and so on and so on. Yeah, so that kind of features. And they're working together, and each one of those indirectly affecting GDPR or working together with the GDPR. DORA needs to working with the GDPR directly in some areas. We have as well other regulations about the cybersecurity, Cyber Solidarity Act, enhancing cooperations, preparedness, and solidarity among the member of the states. Cybersecurity Act itself, that is for every companies, because if you're looking for the cyber resilience is for the organizations which producing the digital products, software, and the devices. Cybersecurity Act is for everyone, every single organization. Implementing cybersecurity framework for the ICT products and services to keeping them safe and secure. And as well eIDAS, especially eIDAS 2 regulations for the electronic identifications and the trust services for the secure digital transactions, which is quite well implemented in the many of the members of the states, like your digital identity, digital passport, digital ID document is simply results of the eIDAS regulations and implementations of that kind of things here around. So what kind of updates we can see across the different regions? Please remember, we're not updating the GDPR directly. There is no updates for the GDPR, but it's updates across the multiple different acts together. Broadened data scope for the personal data. We're looking for the data which are already the biometric, genetic locations, and online identifiers, not only the typical data from the GDPR. We always look for that one, but you're looking a little bit more details because we have modern technologies and we're using those data much more often. We as well looking for the technology driving complexity because of the advanced functionalities of the artificial intelligence, Internet of Things solutions that increase the digital data types are everywhere, and they're making our data protections much more complex because data can be distributed on the multiple different places. We as well need to looking for the impact of the data governance, especially for the consent, updates, agreements, security protocols, cookies, and that kind of things around. So when you're looking for some of those specific personal data, we always need to look for biometric data, fingerprint, facial recognitions, iris scan, voice patterns, how we're using them, how we're protecting them, how we're storing them, how secure we store, how long we store, and how long necessary will be to keep the data together. A very important part with the genetic informations, how we're keeping the DNA profiles and the related health data, because that one allows us very easily identify the human, identify the person, and it's a little bit maybe not dangerous for them, but challenging for us to protecting the data. Location data, GPS coordinates, mobile device geolocations, movement tracking, all of those which allow us to make any kind of surveillance about the persons as well is taking much more serious now. Online identifiers. We know this in the past as well. We had the IP addresses, so IPv4, IPv6 are data protected under the GDPR, but as well device ID, cookies, and behavioral data collected through the AI system. So you could have a cybersecurity system which collecting information about the employees or members of the team, and based on that one, they build the profiles. That data need to be protected. The data need to be stored in the secure space as well. And of course, all those AI-driven profiling and automated decisions-making activities, which we need to have a possibility to observe and understand, of course, and potentially, if it will be the request, explain to our users. We are as well looking for the broader territorial scope. We know very well that GDPR is applying for the European Union members, and for the citizens of the European Union, let's say, so citizens of the members of the states, but as well it's applying for all of those companies offering goods and services to the European Union residents, regardless of the locations where the organization exists. We're just simply delivering this for the European Union, and we need to be compliant with the GDPR. The organizations must appoint the European representative and conduct the data protection impact assessments to ensure the compliance. The data protection impact assessments allow us to understand how the data are processed and what the organizations outside of the European Union doing with the data, if they potentially taking data back and forth. And the cross-border data rules as well, GDPR enforces rules for the transferring data across the borders, maintain the proper standards for keeping the data safe and secure. So non-European Union companies, if they coming to our market and starting to offer some services, offering the goods or services to the European Union residents, monitoring behavior of the individual, like a tracking and profiling, even the tracking or profiling from your cookie websites, that tracking is enough to say, because cookies are protected by the GDPR, and processing European Union residents' data indirectly through the partners and platforms. So even we have a cookie on the one side, and that cookie bot or cookie website saying that we're taking your data and we're sharing this with the partners, then we have a much more responsibility for that one as well. It means simply that the global businesses, like a US tech company, for example, or Asian e-commerce platforms, I don't want to name any names, but you can imagine names, or you probably know many of those names, are now firmly under GDPR obligations if they interact with the European Union data subjects, which means the person, the human inside the European Union. We're looking for the adaptations of the stricter regulations for example, cookie and the AI. It is not done directly by the GDPR. It's done by for example, guidelines of the local DPIA, Data Protection Authority, like ICO in the UK, Information Commissioner Officer in the UK, which simply set up the set of the guidelines, how the consent needs to be granted, how the cookies will be executed, and what we need to have on the systems. The very important part, which is still somehow forgotten by this small business, because I understand what you could have in mind. We do not like the cookie banner for many reasons. We don't like that we go into the page, and before we do anything on the websites, we must click for the cookie banner. But this is exactly for that privacy perspective, because we must give the consent by us. It must be informed consent, which means it cannot be scenario that you're landing on the page, there is a cookie banner somewhere, and just simply landing on the page, you're doing something, and you're not even being requested about the consent. That thing's not happening anymore. You must be requested about the consent, and you must to give the consent or not, and that information must be stored somewhere else behind the scenes for the auditing purposes. AI and machine learning regulations, new rules how to govern the personal data, especially in the automated systems, mostly coming from the AI Act. Cross-border data transfer, revised and new versions of the standard contractual clauses. We have a SCC for the long time, how we're managing that one, but now we're looking for the sovereignty clauses, like a sovereignty data center, sovereignty data store for the data, and as well geofencing requirements that the data cannot leave some specific area, like area of the country or area of the European Union, and we need to keep them. That requires the partners, like for example, cloud providers, to create the data centers in that specific regions and keeping data there. And for some scenarios, based on the guidelines, not the GDPR, we could have a faster breach reporting requirements. The typical breach reporting requirements for the GDPR is the 72 hours still for the initial informations. But if it will be specific scenario like a healthcare or some child services, that report breaches must be done within the 48 hours. In some countries, it's still a regional settings, not applied for everyone directly, because the GDPR requirements for the timing has not changed. We're looking as well for the scenario Y, things like we discuss here are important because we have AI, because we have a cross-border activities, because we have a risk management which we need to do. And we need to look for all of those things happening around us. The system is not anymore static. I would say that even 5 years ago, our GDPR was relatively static, mostly because we didn't have AI and emerging tech that much. And because it's changed and the regulations has changed and the political situation has changed dramatically in the last couple of years, all of those things are important here as well. So the protections of the data is super important part for our organization. The strictest management of the cookie coming from the couple of different acts, but together summarize them. The cookie consent must be explicit, must have affirmative actions, must disallowing pre-ticketing and implied consent methods, which means I'm landing on the page, I must be able to click that I'm giving the consent or I'm rejecting the consent. If there is a multiple different types of cookie, I need to have a right to decide which types of the cookie I want to reject or not. And that must be affirmative, which means I'm making the actions. Just because I'm landing on the page, it doesn't mean it's affirmative. And even stricter part, just because I'm close the cookie banner, clicking the X in the cookie banner, it doesn't mean that I gave the consent. Because by default, especially a couple years ago, in many scenarios, when the user clicked the X on the banner without answering yes or no for cookies, the system takes this as a granted and as a yes, as an opt-in. We cannot have this anymore. It cannot be automatically pre-ticket options here as well. Granular consent choices. If you have a website and you have a multiple different cookies, you need to be able to find that cookies and you need to be able to answer for that one. I don't know if I can show you this, but if I will go here, for example, here, for example, this one, there is a cookie, for example, yes. And when you have a cookie banner, I've been on that website today, so that is absolutely fine. You can see this is something which is very simple, but this is at least a minimum which we need to have. Yes, we have an accept and or reject non-essential cookie. Essential cookie will be added because they are simply using for the browsing and keeping our session alive. So that is a natural. But the other extra cookies, I have two options to say yes or no for those cookies, and then that cookie will be managed on the ICO website in some specific way. And behind the scenes, we should have, of course, cookie page, which simply explaining us what kind of cookie we have on that website and how long that cookie are hosted. And that kind of preparation is not maybe super easy, but this is something which we definitely should have inside our system. Consent document and revocations. Organization must document the consent, so must have a system which allow to find that user consent to the cookie or not. And that one, if the user want to revoke, we need to be able to go for that cookie and remove that cookie and remove that consent as well. We need to remember user always have a rights to remove the consent for the cookie. So user can observe the website and the next month can come back and send an email. Please delete cookie from my website. I don't want to be associated with that website anymore. That one, of course, impacting the marketing and artificial intelligence because all of those analytics, artificial intelligence personalization, all those things requiring the lawful data usage. So we need to check twice that we're using this properly. Article 4 and 7 of the GDPR define the consent as a freely given, specific, informative, and ambiguous, expressed through clear affirmative actions. Interpretations of that one are a little bit more stricter from the guidelines, but we can very simply find explicit, informative, and freely given. Consent must be a positive act like clicking I agree or signing. Individual must know who processing data, what data are collected, why and for what purposes, how long will be stored, and the rights to withdraw consent at the time. And freely given, this is already, we have a very big discussions in the European Union, and not only, no coercions or take it or leave it. As well, no activities that pay for the access and then you'll not have a cookie or something like that. Yes, which happening especially with the social media platforms and so on. So we need to look for this very carefully, especially the conditions for non-essential services and so on. We need to build the consent for the multiple purposes, which we did before. Now is the prohibited option, because we have that kind of scenario that the consent was once for multiple different options automatically chosen, and the user opt in for the multiple different actions without specific control. We stopping this. We are already going to stopping this with the new approach. Clear affirmative actions. No pre-ticketed boxes or implied consent. Silence, inactivity, or pre-selected options do not count as a consent. So just because I'm landing on the page and I do not see the cookie banner, it doesn't mean that I consented for the processing my data. Please remember, the cookie is a personal data. The cookie is my data. It's data about me. The cookie allowed the someone who get the access to the cookie finding me. I can find if I have a cookie, I can find the individual behind the cookie. If I know the IP address, I can find potentially individual behind the IP address. For that reasons, that data are protected under the GDPR. Must be actively opt-in, like a manually ticking box or the signing form, not by default or not by just simply traveling on the website. Must be granulated consent, which we already see this, marketing versus analysis. There are two different types of operating the data, two different types of consuming the data by the organization, and we need to, of course, look for them. And business purposes means absolutely nothing. So that statement is invalid, especially if you're looking for some decisions of the ICO in the UK. That statement, are we collecting your data for business purposes? It means absolutely nothing. Yeah, you must have information so why you exactly collecting. Business purpose, not explain anything. And easy withdrawal. Users must be able to revoke consent as easily as they gave it. So for example, unsubscribe link or something, and then the process needs to happen to removing that consent from the system as well. Some extra clarifications as well. Layered consent notices provide essential info upfront for the linking details, which I showed a moment ago with the cookie. Plain language. Avoid legal jargon. Use clear, concise wording. Something which the user can simply understand. Something which user will not be scared to read. Sensitive data. Explicit content is mandatory for them. Biometric, genetic, and health data. You cannot just simply give the consent. You must request user for the consent. User must click for that one. And international transfer. For all of those users where the data potentially go outside, we must inform the users that the data going for the third-party country, like a non-EU, without adequacy decisions. We're looking for the cross-border data transfer, which will be next topic for us. But we're looking how we're protecting the data. It is enough to take the data from the customer in the European Union into the UK, and then we have a third country, third-party country, and then we need to look for the cross-border data transfers. It is very interesting, especially from the UK perspective, because we used to have to be in the European Union. The Brexit happens, and we are not anymore. The results of this is that we are the third-party country already, so we are already under the regulations with the cross-border data transfers as well. So how the cross-border transfer will work? SEC, standard contractual clauses, nothing new as a topic, as a concept, because we have the SEC from the beginning of the GDPR. But the SEC has been expanded for the multinational transfers and the extra transfers as well over the years, a little bit prepare, a little bit better. We're now including data sovereignty clauses, ensuring data remains under European Union jurisdictions, and they are safeguarded from the foreign government access. That is very, very important part, especially for the multi-country, multinational providers, like a cloud providers. Transfer impact assessments. organizations must conduct the TIA to assess legal risk and recipients countries and apply extra safeguarding if needed. We need to create the assessments of risk, what will happen with the data if the data will be transferred, from where to where, because of what, for how long, in what format. We as well need to look for the protections of the personal data which are transferred outside the European Union if that data arriving somewhere have the same protections as GDPR standards. The protections cannot be lower. The protections can be higher, but they cannot be lower. And some of those old standard agreements between, for example, UK and the US do not work anymore, like a privacy shield, for example. And multinational companies and the cloud provider must comply with the GDPR as well to legally transfer data internationally. If not, they must keep the data inside the European Union. Unless it's nothing stated specifically in the specific countries, it will be enough if it will be the European Union. But if the local government decided that a part of the data being stored in the European Union, they must be stored, for example, only in the Germany, then we need to have as well apply and be compliant with that one. So the cloud providers need to be compliant with that kind of regulation as well. Once the data will be transferred to the third-party country based on, of course, standard contractual clauses, and data arrived somewhere, of course, we need to have a protections of that data, and we need to guarantee or do as much as possible to making the data safe and secure in the same level of the GDPR. But on the other side, so when the data are hosted in the European Union and they are managed by the multinational countries or multinational companies, we as well need to have a protections that the third country governments, without the judicial review, will not be able to access for that data just because they want to have that data. So that is as well a very important challenge for the providers. Metadata and backups must stay within the European borders, especially backup for storing the data and the metadata for having information what kind of data we have in mind. If we have a sensitive data, then the support team handling the data must be European Union residents. This is not something absolutely brand new, because if you're looking for the some cloud provider, like for example Microsoft Azure, which created the sovereign data centers in Germany, that was exactly that kind of approach. That German data centers, two of them, two regions from 4 in total, being built by the German employees, German companies, with the German telecommunication provider for the German customers and German citizens, and for the German organizations only. And there is a strict restrictions that because of that sovereignty. So we need to look for this as well. And clients can demand biannual compliance reports from vendors. So I can request from vendors once per 2 years, give me reports, how you're keeping the data, how the data flows, and what's happening with my data potentially in your system. For the international data flows, we of course using the SCC, standard contractual clauses, but as well using the binding corporate rules, BCR, with supplementary measures, extra features around that, transferring and storing data outside of the European Union. We're looking for the encryption, how we're encrypting the data, and we're looking for the access control. Encryption still on the RSA or SEC, so elliptic curves protocols, absolutely fine. But of course, based on the changes with the encryption world and upcoming post-quantum cryptography, we of course thinking already for the changing this for something new. But as well, we need to check very well that all of those access control is implemented properly as well. And before transferring data, the organizations must assess the risk of the destination country, implement additional safeguarding safeguards if the local laws undermine GDPR protections, and being sure that data are protected. If not, the data cannot be transferred. If the data will be transferred, then we could have a hefty penalties for that one, for the non-compliance data transfer. We'll talk about some of the examples a little bit later. Those things impacting our cloud providers very much, because cross-border data transfer rules and forcing cloud providers to control what exactly happening, how the SaaS applications protecting data privacy, how the data transferring around the system. We as well looking for the contractuals and compliance requirements, which, of course, contracts required clauses which prohibiting unauthorized access, and as well allowing the customer to request the reports from the compliance and audit. That one, implementing the cost bigger and bigger, of course, because new rules increase operational complexity and cost, which could be not very small, but is absolutely essential to maintain trust and avoid penalties of the data breach, potentially. And as well as any kind of hosters or any kind of organizations which hosting data outside European Union, we have a very big challenge here, because data generally need to stay in the European Union, so our repositories and storages should be inside the European Union as well. That one, bringing our cloud providers, especially cloud providers and MSP providers, managed service providers, to implementing geofencing in agreements, to implementing data sovereignty clauses, which of course will be high complexity if you have a much more advanced functionalities. We need to look as well for the European Union-based data centers for the applications and for the system to meeting that requirements. That one definitely increasing the cost and the speed of the implementations quite often, especially at the beginning. And non-compliance apply as well, up to 20 million or 4% of the global revenue, whichever is higher in our environment. This matter because the SaaS must think about the data routing, must think about the storage strategies, and we must be able to ask them, hey, where are you storing my data? Which data center are you using? You'll probably never have access for exact place, which rack on the server it is, because it's not important, but the which locations is important very much. Privacy shields alternatives, which we used to have, for example, European Union versus United States, privacy shields doesn't work anymore, but mostly based on the Schrems 1 and Schrems 2 cases. So standard contractual clauses and the binding corporate rules are now primary mechanism to manage this properly inside our system. And of course, because we're talking about the geofencing, we need to look as well how the geofencing can be implemented, how the data will be restricted from the access from the outside European Union, where we exactly keeping the data, what are the borders of keeping this information, and so on. Which could be challenging if you're comparing this, for example, with the US Cloud Act, which allowed some level of the surveillance over the data because of the, let's say, national security, let's say, in this way. So you're looking for that kind of compliance as well with the data sovereignty, and as well transferring data between the data centers, between the border, across the border as well. That geofencing bringing the couple of challenges. Personal data must be stored on servers located in the European Union on jurisdictions with the adequacy decision. So if we have that agreement. Not only primary data, but as well metadata, logs, and backups must reside in the designated regions. Remote access from the outside European Union is limited and required mostly strong safeguards like a VPN with the endpoints, encryptions, and so on. And automated routing, all of those systems must automatically route all of those data to the European Union-based servers to prevent non-compliant regions transferring data. So that the data will travel somewhere where they shouldn't. And the last one, before we're going for the short break, impact on the cloud and the SaaS providers. If we have rules for following with the keeping data locally, provider need to have data centers which are only in the EU. So simply supporting that specific customers, like our sovereignty data centers in Germany. Multi-cloud setups need to be Go-aware orchestrations, especially when you're talking about the resilience and recoverability. And we still need to keep the data in the one place. So we cannot just move to the another country outside of the European Union. We still need to keep this inside the European Union zones. So that is as well very much challenging for the cloud provider. All of this increase the infrastructure costs and as well increase the complexity of the SaaS provider in our environment. So you can see the couple of things happening here. We're looking for that kind of technological things here, mostly because we have a personal data which are related, which are used in the systems. Because the data exists and those data are sensitive, personal, and protected by the GDPR, we need to follow the rules and implement this properly as well. All right, excellent. I will going for the break, finding the timer for observed 10 minutes break. And after 10 minutes, we go back. Okay, see you in a moment. All right, going back. Welcome back after the short break. We have another 50 minutes more or less for the next part. Okay, so I'm going back to the slides. A second, and we started, and we are here. Okay, excellent. Before I going for this one, I want to share one more thing. In the link I will put, in the chat, I will put the link in a moment. This is your, let's say, extra help for the small businesses. We discuss a little bit about the standard contractual clauses. And as well, we discuss a little bit about the simplicity of the reporting, simplicity of the measurement, simplicity of the compliance a little bit. So the European Commission is running from the long time project called Omnibus. And that Omnibus have a couple of different extensions. In our case today, Omnibus 4 extensions of certain mitigating measures available for the small and medium-sized enterprises to small to mid-cap enterprises and further simplifying measures. I'm posting this to the chat. The idea of this is that there is a plenty of the documents here you can find explaining how the European Union Commissions have a planning to making the GDPR and the requirements and obligations simplified for the small business, unified them and simplified for them. So you can go for that one as well, looking what we waiting now for this from the a little bit longer time. Those proposals are under the discussions in the European Union and the partners. The not less important part of our GDPR and data protections is the machine learning, artificial intelligence, generative AI, and all of those things coming to the system. So we cannot simply omitting this now because we're using this almost on the daily basis, and many of us using this on the daily basis, including organizations for the business purposes. Then for that reasons, we're looking a little bit more for the compliance of the AI and the machine learning in the context of the processing data and processing personal data as well. So the specific obligations for the artificial intelligence driven systems. Organizations must conduct the data protections impact assessments, DPIA. We need to run DPIA as well in the GDPR, but that one is the DPIA for the AI systems, which allow us to understand the profiling and automated decision for the automated systems which using the profiling or automated decisions, allow us to understand what the system is about, how system operate, what kind of data they process, what is the input, output, and so on and so on. Privacy by design principles are in place as well. Artificial intelligence systems must incorporate privacy by design, emphasizing data minimization and purpose limitations. That is simply AI Act, Artificial Intelligence Act. Human oversights and recourse, artificial intelligence decisions required human oversights and mechanism enabling individuals to contest outcomes, which means if I will not agree with the decision made by the artificial intelligence, I always can say I do not agree. I want to, go against that one. I want to understand what's happening, and I want to understand why you're making the decisions, for example. And we need to align this with the ethical approach, responsible AI and ethical AI, with the ethics preventing bias and decisions making which is opaque by the something like we make the decisions to not giving you the credit card. Decisions has been made by the system and you're not getting credit card because system say so. That is very opaque decision making, which is still happening in some scenarios. So we do not want to have this. We're protecting our system from this part. Specific obligations for AI-driven data processing. AI systems that process personal data are now fall under the stricter GDPR interpretations and complementary rules from the European Union AI Act. So this is another example when the other acts working together with the GDPR and making GDPR a little bit higher, or maybe a little bit maybe amending, but not directly. Organizations must clearly define the legal basis, consent, and legitimate interest for using personal data in the artificial intelligence training and interference. Lawful basis for processing the data. Purpose limitation. Data collected for the one purpose cannot be reused for the unrelated AI tasks without additional consent. This prevents functions creep in the machine learning models. You taking the data from the user, using for machine learning process only for this one. If you want to use it for the different process, you must get the consent from the user. And about the consent we discussed before. Data minimizations and accuracy. AI models must only be used for that data which are necessary for the intended purpose and ensure that outputs are accurate and fair without the bias and without the extra changeable factors. Automated decision-making restrictions. Individuals have the rights to not to be subjected solely to automated decisions, especially with the automated decisions affecting them, like a credit scoring, hiring, or other purposes. Human interventions must be available for the decisions-making process, and the humans should be able to make the final decisions, not the artificial intelligence system or automated system. And the data protections impact assessments expanding for the algorithm risks, bias detections, and mitigation strategies for the artificial intelligence as well. Further, European Union Act, binding requirements with the clear disclosure. Users must be informed when interacting with the AI systems or receiving AI-generated content. You already probably see this on the videos when observing there is information. This content is AI-generated. You must have that one if you generate the content, video or something using Midjourney or whatever else, or even the designer or ChatGPT or Copilot. You must put that information. This content is artificially generated or generated by the AI, including capabilities, limitations, and potential risk inside the clear disclosure of the data. Explainability. Organizations must provide the comprehensive reasons for the AI decisions, especially for the high impact like finance, healthcare, and employment. Traceability. Artificial intelligence output must be traceable back to input data and logic. Systems should allow regulators and auditors to reconstruct decision-making processes. Labeling AI, super important part. Artificial intelligence generated outputs must be clearly marked as such in the machine readable format. And this is very important part because we're going later for the reporting. And if your organizations are already prepared to having reports and the content and the descriptions of that one in the machine readable format, then you are one step ahead. That is absolutely great. And the penalties for the non-compliance. Penalties are higher than GDPR in the EU Act. In the EU Act, our non-compliance penalties are 20 million euro or 4% of the global annual turnover, depends which is higher. In the EU Act, we have the 55 million maximum fine and or 7% of the global annual turnover. So you can see it's giving us much bigger penalty because of the AI. We need to look for the transparency. User notification. Organization must inform users when AI is involved in the decision making. Organizations must provide the summaries for the decision logic and influencing factors which help user understand the outcomes, why exactly those things happened. Artificial intelligence content must be labeling and opt out, and users should have options to opt out of profiling if you're using that one. For example, when you're building the behavioral analysis. And the explainability tools, especially for the human readable outputs, we want to have a better trust implemented around our environments. And of course, our users need to be able to challenging the automated decisions, going for the organization asking why your system decided that. I want to have explanations, and we need to deliver that explanations for the user. So no more secrecy that much, or not that much like we used to have before. Accountability, transparency, explainability, and so on and so on. You could have a questions when the DPIA, data processing impact assessments will be important. Is mandatory when the AI processing likely to result in a high risk for the individual's rights and freedom. Examples: profiling or scoring, credit scoring, behavioral prediction, mortgage scoring, and so on and so on. Automated decisions making with significant effects, like, for example, hiring or insurance approval. Systematic monitoring, like a surveillance and tracking in the public spaces. All of those things, once we have implemented, and we have implemented already in many places, must be run. If they're running, they must be run with the DPIA on the top. Data processing impact assessments. Yes, that one options we need to have. We cannot forget about the minors. There is a more and more pushing for the better regulations for the minors, for protecting the children, for protecting the non-grown-ups, non-adults. And we already see this in the multiple places, like Australia, which is the first country banning the social media for the minors under age 16. And I think we're going for the other countries as well, and probably will be implemented more and more. We have already big discussions in the UK about that data protections from this perspective, Online Act, which banning some of those accesses and potentially banning others. But I think this is the very big point for the discussions in every organizations. We need to have a tighter rules for processing children data, and it's slowly happening. Too slow in my private opinion, but at least we have something at the beginning. Privacy by default. Accounts for minors must be private by default, with location sharing and the public profile is disabled for enhanced safety. So when the minor going to opening the accounts on the social media, like I don't know, Snapchat, for example, or TikTok, or something else, that profile must have a location sharing disabled, public visibility disabled, and a couple different things disabled by default. Minor maybe will be able to enable this if they will have a permissions, depends on the setup, depends on the applications, depends on the consent, but by default must be disabled, which is completely opposite which we have, for example, for many years on Facebook and other places. Avoiding manipulative design. Organizations must avoid manipulative design patterns like autoplay and infinite scrolling to protect children's attentions. So what it means? The autoplay of videos when the user scrolls the page should be disabled. So video will be played only when the user click for that one. And then if we scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, the scrolling should stop at some moments. And we can already see this in many scenarios. If you're using social media, like for example, LinkedIn, which is the professional social network, and you're using this, for example, on the mobile, and to scrolling, that's a LinkedIn in some moment stopped and not showing you any new things, because avoid manipulative design is implemented. Ethical data handling. Data from children is ethically sensitive by default and requires age-appropriate transparency and protections measures which need to be applied for the applications as well. And of course, we need to have a risk assessments and adjustments. Platforms must perform the child rights focused risk assessment. So we're looking first for the risk which happening for the children and for the minors, and adjusting that safeguards for the minors online must be in place to protecting privacy and data of the children as well. So we can see a couple of options happening here. That private by default settings, no public profile, no friend lists, no automatic location sharing, no friends around you who you maybe want to connect, nothing like they are the people who are close like you and you can connect them or follow them. That thing should be absolutely disabled for the minors. Nothing like this. Cameras and microphones disabled unless specifically enabled as well by default. User logging for the first time, creating the profile, even is a social media like a Snapchat or whatever. User login, user is minor, the camera is disabled, the microphone is disabled by default. Ethical design for the children. Platform must avoid manipulative user interface interacting, like infinite scrolling, as I mentioned, auto-playing, and the gambling like rewards as well. Those features must be opt-in only, and because they are opt-in only, they must have a functionality of opt-out as well, the system. Transparency in data use. Children data now considered ethically charged, so clear, age-appropriate explanations how data are collected and used. The explanation must be done that the minor reading this will understand. So it must be specific language, not the typical, legal language which we have for adults. And as well, we need to look for the limits of the algorithmic influence, especially when we have a recommendation systems, because a recommendation system encourages users to spend extensive time on the screen, and we want to disable this as much as possible. We want to limiting this. We want to set up that, okay, you're going for the website, you're going for the mobile system, there is no more scrolling, which means there is nothing more to see there, nothing more to explore. And that one, protecting the privacy of the children, that one protecting the good behaviors, that protecting as well, decreasing the risk of finding the places which children should not be able to find. Important part from the to the organizations producing that content. So we discuss about this a little bit here as well. We as well need to look for the data minimizations, collecting only what is strictly necessary for the service, avoiding profiling children for advertising or behavioral predictions. And as well, we need to look for the parental controls, offering the parents robust control for the consent and monitoring tools, ensuring that the parents can easily manage the privacy settings without compromising child autonomy. So, for example, having the specific partner profile, when the parent profile, when the parent can manage the settings for the children, not going directly for the children profile. So still giving the child autonomy to switch on, switch off some of the switches, but as well protecting in the global, in the parent-child hierarchy, simply here. We're looking as well for the age verification. Platform must use strong verifications methods like mobile network checks, biometrics, or digital identity wallets. And I think that the digital identity wallets will be the future for that one, for confirming that if you are a user of the wallet and the wallet showed me that you are 16 years plus, you can create accounts on that platform, for example. Whatever information will be checked, like a network checks, biometrics, digital identity, that information as well as processed must be stored as short as possible or not stored at all, if it's not necessary. Sometimes we have as well parent consent, especially for the users under consent age, which will be between the 15 and 16, depends on the country. Verifiable parental consent is required for knowledge-based or video authentication. So we just simply need to request the parents to agree with the settings. Passive checks for age verifications, how old are you, is no longer acceptable. This is probably the biggest challenge, how to properly get the data, confirming that the user is in that one. So we're not asking on the website anymore, or we shouldn't ask on the website anymore, are you over 18 years old? Yes, no. Because that is not the check verification. Mobile network checks, bank account linking, that is easy because bank account is easy. The minors can have a bank account from the early age, 15 years old, they can have it from the 7 years old even. They have a banking account, you're linking the bank account and then linking as only prove that things exist, and that's proving that person is over the 7 years of age, for example. European Union digital identity wallet and as well face match ID or biometric verifications with the privacy safeguardings can be implemented. Parental consent as well, as I mentioned, for the digital consent age 15, 16 years old, depending on your country, platform as well must implement that verifiable parental consent using modern methods like text plus secondary verification, maybe knowledge-based authentications like questions from the public records, or secure video or biometric checks on something else. Yes, no consent granted by default just because someone said, yes, I am 18 years old. The rules apply globally if services are available in some countries like European Union, UK, and US, and as well we have a non-compliance fines for that one. So a couple of changes with the data privacy over the minors as well. Going back a little bit for the GDPR, we of course speaking about the data subject request, which means the user is able to, based on the GDPR, user is able to invoke the requests for the rights to be forgotten, rights to be aware, rights to getting the data about myself, and so on. Article 17, 19, 21, 23, GDPR, and so on and so on. So when you're looking for this one, I want to be sure that the data portability, objections for rights to objects, objections to the data, and rights to erasure as well are implemented properly. The problem which we have is that the rights to erasure from the GDPR perspective is relatively simple. Article 17, please find all of my data about me and erase them. But now we need to cover as well AI-generated profiles and interfere personal data, enhancing privacy protection as well. That is not super easy because that AI-generated profiles could be not human, to be fair, if they create fully in AI. Extend data portability, including behavioral insights and the required structure, machine-readable formats for easy data transfer. And rights to object as well. User can object to profiling, can automate decisions without losing service access, empowering control, and so on and so on. So that kind of activities as well are important. Rights to be forgotten, rights to erasure, expanded to including AI-generated profiles, and as well, organizations must delete all linked data sets, including backups and derived analytics, whatever is possible. I know that it's sometimes not possible to delete that specific records from the backups, but whatever is possible, we must do as best as we can to delete that data. Data portability, applying for the AI-driven insights and behavior profiles, and especially we need to remember that the data must be provided in the structured machine-readable formats like a JSON, XML, CSV, and so on. And the rights to object, stronger protections for the profiling, especially if the user objecting to the AI-based personalization targeting advertising, you just say, do not use that one for me. Do not targeting me. Do not use AI personalizations and so on, but I still need to have access for the services so without losing access. There are some proposals which already are under discussions. We don't know if they will be applied or not, but some of those proposals which already we have a standard request for the DSR, for the data subject request. We have a 30 days for now, with the possibility of expansions for the 60 or 90 days in some scenarios. There is some proposals, some discussions about reducing this. We don't know yet if it will happen or not. Some special extensions allowed for the longer time, but as well we have proposals for the urgent cases. But for example, you have a minor sensitive data, and I have, for example, I could have a scenario that I'm requesting to deleting data about the minors in the 7 days. It must be done quick, not a 1 month. 1 month is too long time to delete that data. Yeah. Responses must be digital fields delivered via the secure portals or encrypted email, so no printed mail and sent by post. Human readable and machine readable, which allow us to clearly understand what you're talking about, and because it's structured, we can make this to move the data to the different systems as well. And if we're using the AI in our processes or during that request, artificial intelligence decisions, logic summaries as well need to be implemented in the case. Impact for our organizations. We need to implement much more automated workloads to handling requests quickly. Manual handling doesn't work if you have a limited timeline. for this. Artificial system must support traceability to comply with the erasure and the portability processes. And the failure to meet timelines as well can lead to the higher fines if it will be very problem. This is the decisions of the local authority as well. What potentially payments will be done. Data, as I mentioned a moment ago, human readable, machine readable format, digital as best, PDF perfect, or eventually extendable format. Available to work with the automations and as well availability to comply with the timing schedule as well, that kind of things. We need to look for the profiling a little bit. So there will be two or maybe 3 slides about the profiling, because profiling involves using personal data to evaluate aspects of the individual, such as behavior. Profiling is using for decades for all of those marketing systems, marketing, sales, and security, of course. That's simply building something like a credit scoring based on the transaction history. We know this very well, or maybe not everyone. But if you want to get the mortgage, for example, and we're coming to the bank and we are completely brand person and we don't have any kind of credit history, the decision in most cases will be negative. Because we don't have a tracing history, we don't have a credit history, we cannot prove how good or bad we are with the payments. So sometimes the good advice is to having some kind of credit or loan for a moment, using it, paying for this, paying properly, and that building the history. That will allow the organizations understand the risk. So then later credit scoring based on the transaction history will be proper. And of course, using AI for this quite often, because using the multiple values and multiple subcomponents to measuring that risk. Targeted advertising using browsing patterns. So this is happening very, very often, of course. It's almost natural that based on how I'm browsing, I see some things or not see some things. And as well, predictive analysis for the hiring or insurance, how good or how bad my insurance will be, and how I'm based on my historical values, but as well predictions of what's happening around me. Under GDPR 2025, profiling that procedures, legal or significant effects will be executed. We need to protect this information specifically, much more stricter rules, because that information simply touching the more personal data very, very, very often. Rights to object. The individuals have a rights to object for profiling and automated decision making. That's coming from the Artificial Intelligence Act, especially when it's based solely on the automatic processing and affecting rights of freedom. There is no specific service penalty for that one, but if the user decided that you don't want to, if the user decided that I still want to use that kind of services, but I don't want you to profiling me or doing anything with my data, you cannot just simply block access for the system. Yeah, you cannot give the penalty for the user for not wanting to be profiled, let's say. Yes. That as well is implemented with the actions of the stop profiling immediately when the user requesting, and as well transparency. User must be informed about the logic of the profiling and so on and so on. As much as possible, we need to put the clear opt-out mechanism for profiling. So simply options that user always can go out from this in easy way. Explaining profiling purpose and consequences in plain language as well. Offering human interventions if the decisions of AI have been made and we are not happy, and so on and so on. And the legitimate grounds for continuing profiling after objections. User can object, I don't want you to profile me, and we're saying, but we must profiling you because of this, and so on. Standard penalties. We can simply say that potentially nothing specifically happened, because we still have, from the GDPR perspective, the same rules 2% or 10 million euro, whichever is higher for the low problems, and the higher problems 20 million euros or 4% of the global turnover, whichever is higher. But we are already starting to see that the fines are much bigger than that values in some scenarios, because the DPIA, Data Protection Authority, or judiciary can request a higher fine if something is very, very serious. I will show you just a moment in a couple of examples. So when you're looking for that kind of activities, higher maximum penalties, 20 million or 4 of the global turnover for severe violations. Previously was 20 million and 4% as well, but that one is for the group already. So there is some decisions from the European Court of Justice, which is our main authority at the end of everything, that in some scenarios, the payment can be taken not only from the organization, but for the group where the organization is member of. So for example, if we have a multiple organizations as a conglomerate in the systems, we have a group of the companies, then the payment can be taken, for example, as a 4% of the global annual turnover, but not for the company, but for the group. And that is a different story, because that's already building a much higher price for that one. It applies for breaches involving AI profiling, children's data, and cross-border transfers as well. So we need to look for this a little bit more in our systems. More proactive enforcement for the DPIA, for the Data Protection Authority. Automated monitoring. DPIA already can start using the AI solutions to detect the compliance failures, like, for example, scanning the websites, checking for cookie banners, consent flows, and so on. We're looking for the high-risk data processing in the sector-specific audits, like a healthcare, finance. And we're as well looking for the cross-border cooperation, European Data Protection Board working for the global cases across the different countries inside the member of the states, but as well outside of the member states, like a European Union and UK, for example. And some of those examples, why I say that the money is bigger than the standard value, because it's always decisions of the DPA, and later, if the company do not agree, decisions of the jury, European Court of Justice, in our case. So, violation. Meta was fined 1.2 billion euro for unlawful data transfer, illustrating severe penalties for the GDPR data breach. Is very, very heavy money. TikTok, 345 million penalty due to inadequate age verifications, highlighting compliance gaps. AI recruitment platform was fined 95 million for lacking transparency in automated decision making. Why you hiring me or not? And they didn't answer. And when looking for the lessons of that violations, we sometimes see that the robust data protections and proactive compliance measures can simply help us to avoid those penalties once we'll be catched. DPAs, I don't have a list for all of them for you, but we have independent public authorities in each of the European Union member states responsible for the supervising GDPR compliance around the system as well. So that is very, very important part as well. We discussed about the penalties a little bit. They are the responsibility of the DPA. So the Data Protection Authority monitoring the compliance, investigating data breaches, issuing the penalties, giving the guidance and support, and managing the cross-border coordinations of the data as well with this data. And now at almost the end, it's not completely the end, because I have still plenty of the slides for you, but I will not show all of them probably for you. That those slides will be available later for you, I think, because I have a couple of extra best practices or guidelines of that one. So practical compliance strategies, how to be compliant with this system. Think about the privacy by design and privacy by default all the time. implement this privacy by design into the system architecture operations. It allows you to ensure that default settings maximize user privacy at the beginning from the early start. Data minimization security, minimize data collection, store data in secure place, store only that short as you need, and then delete them. And as well, be ready for the transparency, explainability, bias inside the artificial intelligence models, with supporting better responsible practices and compliance. Identify personal data and the flows of the data, and ensure proper documentations for the compliance as well as with the data mapping. Run the DPIA risk assessments, including artificial intelligence and the children data protection. Check vendor risk evaluations, third-party vendor risk, which is enforced almost by the other regulations, maybe not strictly by the GDPR, but that one allows us to look for the compliance across the system as well. Prepare for the audit and breach notifications while you're maintaining the DPI, consent log and transfer impact assessment. You are great because you're already preparing this, and in case of something will happen, you are prepared. But as well, it's good to having the automated workflow to manage data subjects and breach report quickly and effectively. You could have in some scenarios different approach of the reporting data breach, because we already have some sectorial settings for the 48 hours breach notification instead of 72. So much faster. And as well, keeping the audit trial will be important here as well, ensuring that all of those artificial intelligence functionalities going well together with the GDPR compliance. Practical compliance I mentioned a moment ago. The first one, privacy by design by default. Data mapping, DPI, and vendor risk assessments as well, important part. Audit readiness, be prepared for the audit. Look for the timeline in some breach notifications in some specific sectors, not everywhere, but in some specific scenarios we have already locally, like for example, ICO in the UK released some of those guidelines for reporting in the 48 hours, not the 72. We're looking for as well AI governance over the system. The first helpful solutions will be our standard contractual clauses. We have a standard normal 4 clauses, which deciding how we're processing how we're moving the data and processing data, transferring data between the controller and the processors in the multiple different correlations in the system, as you can see here. But as well, we have public consultations about the other standard contractual clauses, like a conflicting foreign laws, government access to the data, and enforcement challenges, and so on. So we already have that discussions about the other standard contractual clauses which helping us into the system. Any special cross-data transfers functionalities like a safe harbor, for example, anything which happened before the Schrems 2, before the judicials of the Schrems versus provider, our standard contractual clauses must be as well supported with the transfer impact assessments and the extra additional safeguarding features. And then I have a couple of examples of the maybe key components or best practices for some solutions, like a DPI for the artificial intelligence, descriptions of the processing, how using the data, and how you make the decisions, for example. Justifications why we're using AI for that purpose, and exploring maybe some of those proportional, less intrusive alternatives. Identifications and assessments, like identifications of the bias, discriminations, lack of transparency, security vulnerabilities, as well for the individual's physical, emotional, or material harm which could happen with that kind of data. Mitigations, technical and organizational safeguarding, encryptions, bias, human oversights, and as well procedures for the automated decision. transparency, ensure that the individual can understand how AI decisions are made, provide the clear and accessible explanations for the significant outcomes, engage the stakeholders, involve data protections officers, legal team, technical experts early in the design phase, and as well consider public consultations if it's important. This is exactly happening with the link which I share with you. This is exactly what's happening. There's a public consultations about the Omnibus project. When you're looking still for the GDPR, some of those compliance lists helping us looking for the localizations and sovereignty, especially data center based in the European Union, geofencing, and so on. Contractual and legal requirements, standard contractual clauses, binding corporate rules, and supplementary measures of the systems as well. How and when conduct the transfer impact assessment for the cross-border data. We need to run these assessments before the flow will start, so before we start moving data. And as well applying some of those safeguards in the local laws if they are conflicting with the GDPR, because GDPR is most important, but of course we need to follow the local rules as well. Enforcing end-to-end encryptions for the security, enforcing access control policies and the audit logs for the auditability for the data. Being able to deliver for the customer biannual compliance audits. So prepare the templates for the audits potentially. Maybe prepare the audits in advance if you can. Provide the transparency for that kind of activities, and so on and so on. From the communications with the customer, we're looking for the privacy policies, how we reflecting that one for the transfer rules. We need to remember about the very clean and very clear opt-in consent, and as well for all of those data subject rights mechanism, access, deletions, portability, and so on. We of course need to look for the artificial intelligence implementations. That is as well important. So we're looking how we can implement DPIA for the AI. It's simply based on the Artificial Intelligence Act, documenting lawful business for the AI-driven processes, exposure purpose limitation, especially when you have we have a data which we're using in some way, some places, and we want to use the same data somewhere else. We need to request the customer for that one. Data governance, keep the data minimized as much as possible, minimize those data, being sure that data are encrypted, being sure you're avoiding the bias, and so on and so on. Run the DPIA for the high-risk systems like profiling automated decisions, and document mitigating measures, human oversights, fallback procedures, and so on and so on. Inform user when interacting with the AI or receiving AI generated content. You probably observe this over the websites, that when you're going for the websites, we already have we have a bots, and that bots before was, for example, hey, I'm bot, or hey, I'm Sarah, or something. Now we have a hey, I'm bot, artificially created bot, for example. We're telling directly users that thing's happening. Automated decision making, offering the human interventions for the decisions if the user is not happy with the decisions, but as well if this is necessary from the legal perspective. And allow user, of course, contest the AI-driven decisions. Always user should be able to request explanations of that one. Keeping detailed records for the all AI processing activities will be very important as well. Regularly auditing the models, and as well updating DPI templates and the results of that one. Labeling AI content clearly, implementing on this monitoring and training for the fairness and accuracy, and as well training the staff in the context of the GDPR and artificial intelligence compliance. Minor data we discuss. Everything is private by default. Disable features if you don't need them. Implementing robust verification methods. Not that just simply clicking button on the website. Implementing verifiable partner parent consent for that systems. Securing video verifications, knowledge-based authentications, two-factor parental approval, and so on and so on. Always remember about the ethics. Avoid manipulative user interface patterns, especially like auto scroll or autoplay and infinite scroll as well. Limiting algorithmic recommendations and so on. You know, it's something like that. You have a TV, you're playing the TV, you're putting the kids in the front of the TV, and kids watching and watching, and the 2 hours later, the TV saying, okay, there is a 2 minutes, and we're switching off, and the TV will switch off. That should be implemented inside the operating system of that TV, automatic detections that something happening for the long time. Data minimalizations always collect only the data which are important. Explain all of those informations in the transparent way. When using the artificial intelligence, look for the DPIA, look for the child right focus risk analysis. So this is the different analysis as well. Ensure that algorithm not exploit the vulnerabilities, and be sure that the human can oversight the automated decisions for the minors. Data subject risk. Delete all personal data upon request, including primary records, backup archive, AI-generated profiles, and inference data. And respond for this in timely manner when you have maximum 30 days, right to be forgotten. Right to portability. Provide data in the format which the end user can consume, JSON, XML, CSV. That one allow user to take the data and potentially implement anywhere else. And of course, ensure that all of this is encrypted over the time. Allow individuals to object as well. If we have some of those activities with the systems and user are not happy, user always can objecting and said, okay, give me the informations back and stop processing that informations in the systems. A response, especially from the artificial intelligence perspective, are a little bit different than in the GDPR. Standard response about the 21 days. Complex requests can be extended for the 45, and the urgent case minor 7 days as well, as we discussed. This is something which we want to have more and more in the system. A response as well in the way that the humans and machines can read. So that is it that we discussed about this before a little bit. And finally, create a document and audit for all of those data as well. Keep this information, keep the auditing logs, keep the functionality which allow you to answer for the auditor. Hey, we did everything as the best as we can. We did protections as good as we can. We are all right with this. And with that one, we are just about the time to finishing the normal part of the presentations. I hope that there is something which you learn. We're trying the best to give something which is important on our webinars, and I'm very happy to be here with you. I'm happy that you come back and join us on this Friday. Remember that we have as well other trainings, especially Readynez Unlimited trainings. We can look for the Microsoft training and as well security training. And if you have any kind of questions, feel free. We have a couple of minutes for the questions if you have. I see already that. Thank you very much. Yes, okay. Yes, the presentation slides will be later shared with the Readynez as well, with our operation team. Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. If you have questions, I'm still here. You can ask. If not, thank you very much. We wish you very good weekend. Yeah, because it's Friday. It's almost noon my time. It's noon in Europe, so It's Friday already. It's Friday weekend already. Thank you very much. See you on the next webinars.